Tonight at 10, thousands of people line the streets as the Queen's coffin is taken from Balmoral to Edinburgh. This morning, the cortege left Balmoral Castle, where the Queen died on Thursday, for a journey of over 6 hours to Edinburgh. Silent onlookers gathered along the route to pay their respects, and some threw flowers in the path of the coffin. The cortege passed through key landmarks as people bid farewell to the country's longest reigning monarch.
It's just so sad, but privileged to be here and happy that we could say goodbye.
The accession of the new monarch, King Charles III, was proclaimed in towns and cities across the land, including in Edinburgh. And the scenes tonight in London as people continue to leave tributes outside Buckingham Palace, where the King held meetings with diplomats from the 14 countries that recognise him as head of state. And in other news this evening, Ukraine's military say their forces have tripled the amount of territory they've retaken from Russia in little over 48 hours. And mixed emotions in India as it holds an official day of mourning for the death of the Queen. Good evening. The coffin of Queen Elizabeth is being taken on its journey to her final resting place. It left Balmoral, where she died on Thursday, and arrived this afternoon in Edinburgh. Crowds gathered along the route as the cortege made the 175-mile journey to the palace of Holyrood House, where the coffin will remain overnight. Meanwhile, proclamations formally announcing the accession of King Charles III have taken place in Cardiff, Edinburgh and Hillsborough Castle in County Down, as well as in towns and villages around the UK. The funeral cortege made the over 6-hour journey down the east coast of Scotland from Balmoral through villages that the Queen got to know well during her stays in Scotland. It went through Aberdeen, southwards to Dundee, went through Perthshire and then to Edinburgh, ending at Holyrood House. My colleague Kirsty Wark joins us from there. Kirsty.
Reeta, we're outside the palace of Holyrood House, the monarch's official residence in Scotland, the beautiful Renaissance palace, scene of key moments in Scotland's history. And today has been one of those such moments. Tonight, the Queen lies at rest in the throne room of the palace, 3 of her 4 children nearby. This afternoon, the cortege carrying the Queen arrived here from Balmoral. Tomorrow, it will travel slowly up the Royal Mile to St Giles Cathedral, a road that many monarchs have travelled before. It's been a solemn day in the capital city, and I was struck by the silence of the crowds, 10 deep, who stood near the ancient Mercat Cross by the cathedral to witness the proclamation of King Charles III's accession to the throne, taking in what it all means. We are in mourning for the Queen as we proclaim the new king. There's comfort for many that she's here in Edinburgh for a while, near to where, at the opening of the Scottish Parliament, she was called the Queen of Scots. Our special correspondent, Alan Little, followed the Queen's cortege from her beloved home, Balmoral, to Scotland's capital.
It is the place she loved most. Balmoral was not a royal residence, but a private home to her. Her annual respite from the burdens of state and the unrelenting public gaze. Today, that gaze falls on this, the first public sight of the coffin of the Queen. She'd known this landscape since she was a child. From Balmoral to Aberdeen, they passed slowly through towns and villages that knew her not just as the Queen, but as their neighbour. Aboyne, Kincardine O'Neill, Banchory, Drumoak, Petercouter. What is the symbolism of this measured progress, if not to say that she was rooted here, at home in the open green spaces of Royal Deeside? In Aberdeen, they stood in quiet witness before the cortege turned south towards the Scottish capital. In Edinburgh, the King's bodyguard for Scotland, the Royal Company of Archers, came to attend the noon proclamation of the reign of King Charles.
Whereas it has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George.
Three cheers for His Majesty the King! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
At several points, a small group of protesters booed and called for an independent Scottish Republic, but this was not the prevailing mood.
Probably one of the most important days of my life, to see the actual Prince Charles become king and be proclaimed here in Edinburgh.
I wish the King, should I say, all the best for the future. I think he has big boots to fill.
It's just so historic, and it's just something like just really important in history, and I feel so honored to be here and be able to see it. It's just something else.
Proclamations have been read on great state occasions here at the Market Cross of Edinburgh since the 14th century. The Queen was descended directly from Robert the Bruce, Scotland's patriot king, and from Mary, Queen of Scots. Today is another striking reminder of the long continuities in which the monarchy roots us. After Stonehaven, Brechin, Dundee, Perth, over the Forth and into Edinburgh. From Edinburgh Castle, the last mile is appropriately the Royal Mile, at the foot of which sits the monarch's official residence, the Palace of Holyrood House. This is where the Queen's ancestor, King James VI of Scotland, learned that he'd inherited the throne of England on the death of the first Elizabeth, thus uniting the two kingdoms in a regal union. The bearer party, formed by the Royal Regiment of Scotland, carried the coffin past 3 of the Queen's children. The Princess Royal had accompanied her mother's coffin on its progress from Balmoral. Here, the coffin of the Queen will lie in rest in the throne room, before being taken tomorrow to St Giles Cathedral, where it will lie for 24 hours. For the people who lined the quiet streets today, this is the ritualizing of a nation's sorrow. But it is something else too. The ritualizing of transition, the crown passing from mother to son, and the public expectation of continuity. Alan Little, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Ballater is a village on the River Dee, 8 miles from Balmoral, and a place where the Queen knew locals and shopkeepers since she was a little girl. The butcher, Mr Sinclair, recalled a conversation he had with the Queen just 3 weeks ago. About Balmoral, the Queen is reported to have said that she felt like she could hang up her crown at the door and live as close to a normal life as possible. People in Ballater were very protective of the Queen, and the news of her death has hit many hard. It was a tribute to the affection which the Queen held for them that the cortege slowed there this morning, and hundreds turned out to bid her a final fond farewell. Our Scotland editor James Cook has been speaking to people in the village to find out what today's procession meant to them.
Sometimes history unfolds quietly. Ballater bidding farewell to a sovereign and a neighbour.
It's just so sad, but privileged to be here and happy that we could say goodbye. She's been Queen from the day I was born. I was born on Coronation Day. And it's really special to me to say goodbye.
What did she mean to this area?
Well, we knew how much she loved Scotland, and particularly Balmoral. And I think we'll miss seeing her going to church on Sundays. Yeah. It's all right.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
It's a bit sad that she's gone.
Yeah. Do you remember the last time you saw her? Where did we see her?
When she was going to church, when she's coming back from church at Balmoral.
That's right. And after that we think we saw her on horseback riding along the banks in the grounds of Balmoral.
For Adele Phillips, this is personal. She was a housekeeper to the Queen.
I didn't know her in the way that the public do. I saw her in her little tweed skirt and headscarf and that kind of thing.
And what was she like?
Funny, always happy. She liked to joke and she was sarcastic.
And what did that moment just there, watching her pass for the last time, mean to you?
It was quite poignant, but I'm glad I was here to see it. She meant a lot to the area, so it was fitting that it happened here.
Ballater is slowly getting back to normal, but what that looks like is not yet clear. One of the threads which bound the nation together has unravelled, and the question is, what is the future of the United Kingdom without Elizabeth? Because Royal Deeside is not Scotland in miniature. This country contains many citizens who are sceptical about monarchy and opposed to the Union. Not that you'd know it here. Not today.
I think she meant everything. She meant stability through all the years. She's the only monarch that I've ever known, and I think we always look to her, and I personally always look to her as someone who was always there through the dark times.
I think King Charles III now will transition very smoothly and very nicely, and I think he will definitely, she's big shoes to fill, but I think he will do his best for her, definitely.
Many here share that sentiment, but before they turn to the King, this was a final display of devotion to their Queen. James Cook, BBC News, Ballater.
This has been a day of record for Scotland, when the formal accession of King Charles III was recognised in an ages-old ceremony in the historic heart of our capital city, proclaimed from the 14th century Mercat Cross. The trumpet sounded and the military spectacle lit up the Royal Mile beside St Giles Cathedral, and then the crowd joined in the playing of the national anthem. And while it was happening, many miles to the north, the Queen's cortege was travelling slowly south through some of the Highland countryside that she loved so much. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, was following behind, accompanying her mother in her last journey from Royal Deeside. And just as they had done in their thousands at Balmoral, people of all ages stood at the sides of the roads to pay their respects and bid farewell. Tomorrow, they will come in their many thousands to witness the procession of the Queen's coffin from the palace of Holyrood House to St Giles Cathedral. A little earlier, the King and Queen Consort will arrive in Scotland and will be met by, among others, the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. The service of thanksgiving for the life of Her Majesty the Queen begins tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Reeta.
Kirsty, thank you very much. Now let's look ahead to what will be happening in the coming days during this period of national mourning. As Kirsty was saying, the Queen's coffin will remain lying in the throne room at Holyrood House in Edinburgh until tomorrow afternoon. At just after 2:30 on Monday, the King and members of the royal family will accompany the coffin in a procession along the Royal Mile to St Giles's Cathedral, where a service will be held. The Queen will lie at rest at the cathedral for 24 hours, allowing the public to view her coffin for the first time. At 2 o'clock on Tuesday, the coffin will leave the cathedral to be flown from Edinburgh to London by the Royal Air Force. It'll arrive at RAF Northolt on Tuesday evening and then travel by road to Buckingham Palace to rest in the Bow Room. Princess Anne will accompany the Queen's body. On Wednesday afternoon, the Queen's coffin will be taken from Buckingham Palace to the Palace of Westminster. The slow procession will be accompanied by a military parade and by members of the royal family. The Queen will lie in state in the oldest part of the Palace of Westminster, Westminster Hall, for 4 full days until the morning of her funeral, allowing members of the public to file past and pay their respects. Details on how people can view the coffin will be released soon. The Queen's state funeral will take place at Westminster Abbey at 11 o'clock on Monday, the 19th of September. The day will begin with the Queen's coffin being carried from Westminster Hall to the Abbey on the state gun carriage of the Royal Navy. The day has been declared a bank holiday across the UK. Well, this is the scene right now at Buckingham Palace. Thousands of people have come during the course of the day to pay their respects here and along the Mall and in Green Park, just next to the palace. And King Charles arrived at Buckingham Palace earlier today to begin his work as the country's new monarch. Our royal correspondent Daniella Ralph reports.
They have been arriving in their thousands. The slow, quiet walk through Green Park towards Buckingham Palace. Security guards at times had to hold the crowd back to manage the flow of people. But still they kept coming. With no school at the weekend, there were a huge number of families here. Some even brought their pets. The mood, sober and thankful.
We're just in shock how busy it is.
It's very sad as well, like how many
sad.
people like appreciated the Queen and stuff. It's like nice to see everyone coming together.
Because there's loads of people, it makes you feel better. It does. Because when everyone's sad, but then when you see other people, you feel like better.
I hadn't actually cried until I've come today. The atmosphere is amazing. It's kind of just peaceful and sort of tranquil, but very respectful.
As the crowds continue to gather here for the King, it has been a day filled with the business of royalty, the meetings and the audiences that will now take up much of his working life. King Charles arrived at Buckingham Palace from Clarence House, where he's still living. The convoy slowed as it reached the palace gates, giving the crowd a clear view. Inside, there was a reception for High Commissioners based in London. Many he will have known already. And he spent time with the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, 2 men new to their roles. With him, Camilla, Queen Consort, as she too begins a new stage of her life as a working royal. The proclamation of a new king in front of Windsor Castle.
It has pleased Almighty God to call to his mercy our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II of blessed and glorious memory, by whose decease the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles Philip Arthur George.
This royal town has been mourning a queen who made her home here in recent years. What is becoming increasingly clear is the public's desire to do something or go somewhere as a way of paying their respects. It is a feeling likely to strengthen in the coming days ahead of the state funeral. Daniella Ralph, BBC News.
Let's now join our correspondent Charlotte Gallagher, who's outside Buckingham Palace for us now. Charlotte.
Thousands and thousands of people have come down here today, Reeta, to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth and also to welcome King Charles to this new role. There were cheers as he entered Buckingham Palace earlier today. Everyone had their phones in the air trying to get pictures. And what's been really nice is the different generations that have come down. We've spoken to people who remember the Queen's coronation, huddled round their neighbour's TV, the only person on the street who had one, and children whose memory of the Queen is, of course, that hilarious sketch with Paddington at the Jubilee. So many happy memories being shared today. And let's speak to a couple of people that have come down today. Father and daughter, Nick and Jess. And Jess, you were lucky enough to meet the Queen, weren't you?
Yes, I was in 2012 for our Diamond Jubilee. It was an amazing moment for me, age 7, which is crazy, 10 years ago. And yeah, it was such a special moment. I got to give her a bouquet of flowers and yeah.
and you gave her the bouquet of flowers, but you're a little bit shy,
Yes.
weren't you? Tell everyone what happened next.
So, being age 7, I was quite a shy girl, so I decided it would be great to run away from her, but it ended up capturing a lovely picture of her smiling at me. So
I think
really
that picture
like
shows how much she loved children as well. Like, she's kind of
Yes.
laughing a little bit. She obviously loved that moment. And your dad, Nick, why did you want to come down today?
Well, firstly, I was at with Jess when she gave the Queen the flowers, and so I think we wanted to share the moment because I worked at Hatfield House, and that's where the Queen was for her Diamond Jubilee, and planted trees and introduced her to the good and the great of Hertfordshire at the time. But why we came down specifically today was wonderful memories of a wonderful lady, and it would just seem entirely appropriate just to spend a little bit of time, sort of quiet reflection, just standing in front of the gates of the palace and just time to ourselves to thank the Queen for her wonderful service to the country. And,
It's the only monarch most of us have ever known. What did she mean to you, Jess?
She meant a lot to me, definitely as a leading figure in everyone's lives and in this country and even across the world. And I think she had her funny sense of humour as well, which just seemed really, really special to a young girl like me, and growing up and seeing someone like that at the leader of our nation.
And where's that photo now of you and the Queen?
So we've got the photo framed in our house and various other pictures of that day, and also a personal letter from her as well, which is really nicely framed in our house.
I imagine that now is even more special to you.
Yeah, it's definitely in the last, as I've grown up, it's become more special, because as I've got older, I've realised how amazing it was and such an honour it was to meet her at such a young age. And it's been, and even now it's become even more special to me.
And you're 17 and still very young, but still she's the most famous woman in the world. Everyone knows who she is. Were your friends talking about it when it happened?
Yeah, so luckily some of my friends got to be there. My primary school got to go to the planting of the tree, and 2 of my friends also got to witness me meeting her as well, which was really, really special and nice.
Wonderful. And Reeta, so many people have these lovely stories of either meeting the Queen or other members of the royal family, and it just shows you how much the Queen means to so many people.
Charlotte, Nick and Jess, thank you very much indeed. Well, as we said earlier, proclamations marking the accession of King Charles have been held in towns and villages across the UK, as well as in the 3 capitals of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. At the service in Cardiff, the proclamation was read in English and Welsh at Cardiff Castle. Earlier today, the new Prince of Wales spoke to Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, and talked about his wish to deepen his relationship with communities across the nation. Our correspondent Hywel Griffith reports now from Cardiff.
History is measured by the names of monarchs, and so this new chapter begins with a new title for the Carolean era.
The Prince, Charles Philip Arthur George, is now, by the death of our late sovereign of happy memory, become our only lawful and rightful liege lord, Charles III.
Around 1,000 people gathered inside the castle, fewer than expected, but those who were there wanted to witness the proclamation.
It's a really momentous occasion, and our girls are really interested. They were really sad. We were all really sad about the Queen's passing.
So a new era has now officially begun. The crowds here today were modest, but many more are expected on Friday when Charles makes his first visit to Wales as King.
It follows over 60 years as Prince of Wales. His investiture in Caernarfon in 1969 drew crowds, but protests too. It's a ceremony some think won't be repeated for his successor, Prince William, who was given the title on Friday. In a statement today, he said that he and his wife Catherine wanted to do their part to support the aspirations of the Welsh people and to shine a spotlight on both the challenges and opportunities in front of them. Having another English Prince of Wales has split opinion here.
Yeah, I can see the difficulties, and obviously sort of historically it is quite a controversial title, but I think, you know, he does have connections with Wales. He was based at Anglesey for a while, so I think he does have that connection.
At the Senedd today, a building opened by Queen Elizabeth, they celebrated her links to Wales.
The life lived so unrelentingly in the public gaze. Every moment captured, every remark dissected, every smile or frown a story. Now that story comes to an end.
Others recalled rather lighter moments.
She wore a suit of peachy pink that day. I had on a dress with a dash of peachy pink too. We matched perfectly, apparently. And you've no idea how many people have asked me quite seriously whether we'd pre-arranged our wardrobe choices that day, as if I was in a secret WhatsApp group with the monarch.
Wales, like the rest of the UK, is going through a changing of the guard as the focus moves to what the new era will bring. Hywel Griffith, BBC News, Cardiff.
Well, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, the proclamation was read in County Down.
5, 3, 5.
A gun salute at Hillsborough Castle marked the announcement of the King's accession. As part of a UK tour, the King and the Queen Consort Camilla will arrive in Belfast on Tuesday before travelling to the castle to view an exhibition on the Queen's long association with Northern Ireland. Well, our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy is at Royal Hillsborough for us now. And Emma, how was the ceremony received there?
Well, it's been a very significant day here at Hillsborough Castle. This is the official residence of the royal family in Northern Ireland, and despite torrential rain, members of the public were streaming through here all day, leaving a carpet of flowers which is now adorning the gates of the castle behind me. And earlier on, soldiers from the Royal Irish Regiment and the band of the Royal Irish Regiment were on parade here for the proclamation, and that royal gun salute rang out from within the grounds of the castle. Now, there were political leaders and dignitaries who also attended today, but Sinn Féin and the SDLP, Northern Ireland's largest nationalist parties, well, they were absent. And really what they were saying today, Sinn Féin made their political boundaries pretty clear, saying they believe that today's ceremony was for those whose allegiances are to the Crown. And the politics of Northern Ireland, of course, mean that there isn't the support for the monarchy in nationalist communities as there is in unionist communities. Nationalists, of course, wouldn't see the royal family as their monarchy. Their aspirations are to become part of a united Ireland, to leave the UK in future. But that said, there is great respect and admiration for the Queen across communities here because of the important role that she played in peace building and reconciliation between Britain and Ireland. And the nationalist parties will be attending other events when the King comes to Northern Ireland on Tuesday.
Emma, many thanks. Well, smaller towns and cities have also been holding their own proclamation ceremonies to formally announce the accession of King Charles. Our correspondent Danny Savage reports now from Otley in West Yorkshire.
Our late Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, of blessed and glorious memory.
In town squares across the country, the most traditional of ceremonies.
The crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
In the market town of Otley in West Yorkshire, over 100 people gathered to listen.
Is solely and rightfully come to the Prince Charles.
And to show their appreciation.
It's a great honour and a terrifying responsibility. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occasion. We will never see another Queen probably in our lifetime. Certainly not one who has managed to do so much, live so long and contribute so greatly to the country, to the world, to the Commonwealth. She was a wonderful lady, and we will miss her.
It's a historic moment, isn't it? Just important to come and experience it, and surprisingly emotional, actually.
We found out that this is this incredibly long tradition where, before the age of the telephone and modern technology, horses and people would have actually headed out from the capital to proclaim the new king or the new queen across the country. And in our own town of Otley, we wanted to see that. We wanted to hear these ancient words and get the sense of occasion and this connection to the past, really, which for us is really important.
But as the process of a new monarchy moves forward, this is a kingdom still mourning the loss of its queen. Shop windows reflect this.
I think it's nice for people just to notice and maybe just to make them smile and just to think, you know, it is going to have a loss in people's lives. There's people that are walking past the studio and if they look at it and smile, and it makes them happy to think the Queen is back with the person that she loves again.
Here, there were 3 generations of the same family.
I don't think people will ever forget her.
Discussing the succession.
I think it's just a lovely opportunity for everybody to celebrate her life because, you know, she probably touched everybody's heart.
Because I'm still quite young, I've not seen much of the work she does. I know it's there, but I just see her as like a nice woman who cares a lot about her family and a lot about other people.
God save the King!
For people who attended any of these events, it is a moment they are unlikely to forget. Another formality in this week of ceremony. Danny Savage, BBC News, Otley in West Yorkshire.
And in Australia, King Charles III has been officially proclaimed as the ruling monarch at a ceremony in the country's capital, Canberra. Thousands of people gathered as the proclamation was signed by the Governor-General David Hurley and the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The flags were raised to fly at full mast as the Australian Army Band Corps played its first rendition of God Save the King for more than 70 years. And here, the Speakers of the House of Commons and the House of Lords will address King Charles and Camilla, the Queen Consort, tomorrow morning. Our political correspondent, Damian Grammaticas, is in Westminster for us tonight. Damian, tell us more about this.
Well, Rita, what we are going to see here tomorrow is part of the long traditions that accompany the accession of a new sovereign to the throne. So we will see hundreds of members of Parliament and Lords all gathered here. We will see the Speaker of the Commons, the Lord Speaker, both addressing the new king. They will offer their condolences and their loyalty, and he will respond with words of his own. But above all, I think what will be most remarkable is the location where all this will happen, in Westminster Hall here, which, remember, was built by the son of William the Conqueror back in 1097. It's witnessed proclamations like this. It's witnessed coronation feasts for Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth. It witnessed the trial of Charles I and also the lying in state of monarchs. But above all, I think what we will see tomorrow then is some of the pageantry and the ties that bind the new monarch to Parliament and the worlds of government and politics.
Damian, thank you. Damian Grammaticas there. The Dean of Westminster Abbey has confirmed that he will conduct the Queen's funeral, which will be held on Monday, the 19th of September. The funeral will take place at Westminster Abbey, where Britain's kings and queens are crowned and where Queen Elizabeth married Prince Philip in 1947. The Queen's faith was very important to her as the head of state and also Supreme Governor of the Church of England. Our religion editor, Aleem Maqbool, has been looking at her faith.
One of the hymns sung at the Queen's coronation, starting a service today at the parish church of the Royals, St Martin in the Fields. Just one of many places of worship in which they've gathered across the country in remembrance.
Like a priest standing at the altar for the people before God, the Queen held the aspirations, commitments and responsibilities of nation and commonwealth in her heart and mind. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth was at the heart of nation and commonwealth. Now she's at the heart of God. We'll meet again.
What will have been remarked on in many of today's sermons is just how deep the Queen's own faith ran. Elsewhere, the head of the Catholic Church in England and Wales remembers a moment he saw that up close at a national service at St Paul's Cathedral.
At a certain point in the ceremony, we were all asked to recite a long prayer which was printed out in the order of service. And I looked up and the Queen had her eyes shut and she was reciting this prayer by heart. And I thought, there's a woman who prays, who probably prays every day.
Of course, there was a moment every year where we were given an insight into how much the Queen's faith guided her, and that was in her Christmas broadcasts.
For me, the life of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, whose birth we celebrate today, is an inspiration and an anchor in my life. A role model of reconciliation and forgiveness, he stretched out his hands in love, acceptance, and healing. Christ's example has taught me to seek to respect and value all people of whatever faith or none.
I, Charles III.
In the past, much was made of the comments of the then Prince Charles about wanting to be defender of faiths, but the oath hasn't changed.
King, defender of the faith, do faithfully...
And neither has the desire to protect the practice of other faiths that his late mother clearly held dear. We knew Her Majesty's funeral would take place in Westminster Abbey, and now we know the man who will conduct it. He's had a meeting with the King over the order of service.
We discussed the content, and as you would expect with services being prepared on an occasion like this, we will be making some changes.
So there's back and forth?
There's back and forth, yes.
Back at St Martin in the Fields, they ended with celebration of the accession of the King and what is, after all, a prayer, the national anthem. Yes, and fascinating to hear from the Dean of Westminster Abbey about just how distinctive a ceremony the funeral will be, and that's partly because of exactly what we were talking about there, how important the Queen's faith was to her. And of course this event has been discussed long before now, and I think we can expect on the 19th of September the Queen's influence all over that ceremony. And interesting to hear as well why the funeral will take place here at Westminster Abbey and not, for example, at Windsor. There hasn't been the funeral of a monarch at Westminster Abbey since 1760, and it's for a couple of reasons that it's happening here. One, the way the Queen had expressed what happy memories she had of this place through family events, her wedding, her coronation, of course, and also for a second reason. There was recognition that the public wanted to be involved in this historic event, and that could happen here much more than it could at a place like Windsor.
Aleem, many thanks. And we'll have more on our main story later in the programme, including looking at a day of mourning being held in India and at the Queen's love of horse racing. And of course, there are more updates and analysis on BBC News Online. That's bbc.co.uk/news, and also by using the BBC News app. Time now to take a look at some other news. Ukraine's military says that its forces have retaken over 1,000 square miles of territory during a rapid counter-offensive in eastern Ukraine. If confirmed, it means that Kyiv's forces have tripled their gains in little over 48 hours. After months of deadlock, Ukraine's fight back against Russia has been gathering pace in the south and the east of the country. These blue circles show where the heaviest fighting has been in the past 48 hours. President Zelensky has said his army is liberating Ukraine step by step. And tonight he has claimed that his troops have liberated the key strategic city of Izium. From Kharkiv, our senior international correspondent Orla Guerin reports.
The spoils of war, abandoned by Russian troops who beat a hasty retreat. The Kremlin's firepower now in Ukrainian hands. Russia says its forces were redeployed. In places, it looks like a rout. For President Putin, not just a defeat, but a humiliation. Here, a pinnacle of Ukraine's success, retaking the city of Izium. It was a key base for the Russians. In newly liberated areas, Ukraine's troops getting a hero's welcome. Their gains coming so fast, Ukrainians can barely keep up. Just look at those smiles. But some will bear the scars of this war for the rest of their lives, like Victor from Kherson region in the south. He's a victim of Russian shelling and Russian brutality, facing a long recovery. He relives the moment when a Russian soldier ordered him to kneel and threatened to shoot him if he refused. He couldn't kneel fast enough, so he was beaten. Anything could have happened, he tells me. We were saying goodbye to our lives. But the latest victories have given Ukrainians a shot in the arm. For the nation, it's been a morale boost. Many are now daring to hope that a turning point has come. In places here, Russia's military ambitions now lie in ruins. But this is not the end of the war. The Kremlin is likely to hit back hard. And when it comes to capturing Ukraine, President Putin takes the long view.
And we can speak to Orla, who's in Kharkiv for us now. Orla, people will be looking at these Ukrainian advances and wondering exactly, as you say, whether this could be a turning point.
Well, Rita, it's certainly the most significant moment since Russian forces had to pull back from around the capital, Kyiv, in the spring. After that, in more recent months, we've had a pattern of the Russians making slow attritional gains and the Ukrainians making losses. Well, that has now been turned on its head dramatically and rapidly. The Ukrainians have made key strategic advances. They say they have recaptured more than 1,000 kilometres now, or more than 1,000 miles, I should say. Now, President Zelensky says he believes a turning point will come this winter and that after that Ukraine will be rapidly freed. He's also said the more weapons Ukraine gets, the faster that will happen. But we have to understand that Russia will hit back. In fact, it already is. Tonight here in the city of Kharkiv, much of the city is without power and water. Now, the mayor says there have been a series of strikes on infrastructure targets. He's blaming the Russians, saying that this is revenge, cynical revenge, he says, for the army's recent successes in battle. And we heard what sounded like 2 more missile strikes ourselves within the last half an hour or so. So there have been gains on the Ukrainian side, but the key question is, can Ukraine keep the momentum? Can it hold the gains that it has made?
OK, Orla, thank you. Orla Guerin reporting there. There's been a day of mourning for the Queen in India, where flags have been flown at half-mast. Prime Minister Narendra Modi described her as a stalwart of our time, and the opposition leader Sonia Gandhi said she was a much-loved figure. There's been a mixed reaction to the decision to hold a day of mourning, with some Indians questioning why a symbol of colonial rule is being honoured, as our South Asia correspondent Yogita Limaye now reports.
A day of mourning. Flags were at half-mast across the country in honour of the Queen. On the eastern coast, a unique tribute in the sand. This is a land once ruled by Queen Elizabeth's family. But 75 years since India's independence, the distance between people here and the British monarchy has grown. Back in 1961, though, when the Queen had first visited, it was a different country. Historian Rana Safwi remembers seeing her.
Growing up in those days on fairy tales, for us a queen was a magical figure. It was the first time we had seen a queen. I have very clear memories of her dress. It was a blue dress, and I remember the guards on horses. Today when we see it, we don't see it just with a lot of, romantic sentiments of a queen or a royal family. Today we also see it as part of the exploitation of the colonies, the imperialism.
I asked her how she feels about the day of mourning.
Condoling the death of a queen who embodied dignity and duty in her life does not mean that you're condoning colonialism or imperialism.
This is the statue of an Indian freedom fighter unveiled just a few days ago. What stood here originally was the statue of King George V, Queen Elizabeth's grandfather. When he was inaugurating this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said a symbol of slavery was being consigned to history. That tells you what much of India thinks about colonial rule today, and why the reaction to the Queen's death here has been muted.
It's very different just across the border in the mountainous kingdom of Nepal, where there's strong affection for the monarchy. For more than 200 years, soldiers from the Gurkha region have served in the UK military. The Queen was always accompanied by 2 Gurkha orderlies for ceremonies. Major Bhuvan Singh Limbu and his father both served the Queen 30 years apart.
On the last duty, she presents us this member of Victorian Order, this cross to us. And that's when she really came close to us, close to me. She saw my medal, the Falklands medal, and then she softly said, "Oh, you have been to Falkland." And I said, "Yes, Your Majesty." We lost a great lady, and we will remember her, and we'll miss her a lot.
Yogita Limaye, BBC News.
It's been confirmed that the late Queen's corgis are going to live with her son Prince Andrew and his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, the BBC has confirmed. Known as Her Majesty's favourite breed, she owned more than 30 corgis during her lifetime. The Duke of York and Sarah, Duchess of York, will take on Mick and Sandy, 2 young corgis that the Prince and his daughters gave the Queen as a present in 2021. The world of sport continued to pay its respects to the Queen today. One of her favourite sports, horse racing, resumed, with the St Leger going ahead at Doncaster after it was postponed following the Queen's death. Our sports editor Dan Roan reports now from the course.
A 2-minute silence as we remember Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
The sport closest to Queen Elizabeth II's heart, paying its respects. Doncaster Racecourse falling silent today as the sport prepared to resume after meetings were abandoned following the late Queen's death. This a chance to reflect on her dedication to a lifelong passion as both owner and breeder. 3-time champion jockey Frankie Dettori, who rode more than 50 winners for the monarch, giving this tribute.
She's done so much for the sport, and personally I know her for 30 years, so yeah, it's a sad day. You know, it's been a sad 3 days. She had the special attraction for racing, and that's why we love her so much. We lost our greatest ambassador.
The pick of today's 9-race card at Doncaster, the St Leger, put back 24 hours, racing's oldest classic, won by Eldar Eldarov.
It's the last classic of the season, the St Leger, and the smallest field. For only
1955, one of the late Queen's early visits to Doncaster. Her love for the sport already clear. Her horse Dunfermline then winning the St Leger in 1977, the year of her Silver Jubilee. The young Princess Elizabeth rode from an early age and inherited her parents' passion for racing.
I suppose I first became interested in racing during the war, when my father had leased Big Game and Sun Chariot from the National Stud.
1954 saw her crowned champion flat owner in just her 2nd season. Her horse, Oriole, came 2nd in the Derby, then won the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth Diamond Stakes at Ascot. Another glorious moment among so many came in 2013 at Ascot in the Gold Cup.
a royal win in the Gold Cup!
Estimate's victory seeing the late Queen become the first reigning monarch to win the trophy in the 207-year history of one of the sport's most prestigious races.
Get off!
Though her famous colours recorded more than 1,800 races, both at home and abroad, the Queen failed in her greatest ambition. The Derby, alone out of the English Classics, was to elude her. The only win she could muster in that race was in the sweepstake. Having first attended Royal Ascot more than 70 years ago, she did so once again last year. 2021 proving Her Majesty's most successful ever horse racing year.
The impact of Her Majesty on horse racing is immeasurable, not only as a major owner and breeder, but to have somebody of her standing globally championing your sport is irreplaceable.
Elsewhere, an emotional moment before the Great North Run. 60,000 participants pausing to reflect in Newcastle before the world's biggest half marathon got underway. While at Monza, a minute's silence was also held by drivers on the grid ahead of the Italian Grand Prix. This, another vivid reminder of the special bond the late Queen had with so much of the world of sport. Sports events at venues like this have given many people the chance to come together to celebrate the late Queen's life and pay tribute. Tomorrow, football, the one major sport to cancel fixtures at all levels as a mark of respect, is set to resume. But the demand on policing around the funeral may mean that more matches next weekend are cancelled. Dan Roan, BBC News, Doncaster.
Time for a look at the weather now. Here's Ben Rich. Ben.
Hi there, Rita. Thank you. Good evening. It was a warm day for many of us, and it turned into a wet day for some, not least in Northern Ireland. It stayed fine just about for the crowds who turned out for the Queen's final journey from Balmoral in eastern Scotland, but the rain arrived here during the evening. It's turned very, very wet indeed, and we will see further heavy rain across eastern and southern parts of Scotland as we head through tonight. The rain tending to clear out from Northern Ireland, the heaviest rain clearing away anyway, but very wet indeed for parts of northern England, especially northwest England and into North Wales. These areas could see some issues from localised flooding and travel disruption through tonight and into tomorrow. Very mild overnight for all of us. 14 to 16 degrees. So a mild start to tomorrow. The main weather feature will be this band of cloud bringing various pulses of rain. But as you can see, it's parts of North Wales, Merseyside, Lancashire, Greater Manchester that could see enough rain to cause some issues. But that band of cloud and rain acts as a dividing line. To the north of it, quite a keen northwesterly wind and a rather cool feel, 14 to 18 degrees. To the south, some real warmth with highs of 25 or 26 degrees across parts of southeast England. A lot of dry weather here, but there could be some isolated heavy showers. Now, during tomorrow night, we push that cloud and rain southwards, cooler, fresher conditions for all of us behind. Tomorrow night will be a cooler, fresher night. But notice the rain struggles to clear away from southern parts on Tuesday, so some could remain. Most will see sunshine and a cooler, fresher feel. Some of that rain in the south will be really reluctant to clear. This frontal system still quite close as we get into Wednesday across southern counties of England and the Channel Islands. But the big story for this week is all about this area of high pressure that's going to start to build its way in from the west. As it does so, we will introduce a northerly wind, and we're going to tap into these blue colours here, some much, much cooler air than we've been used to of late. So by the end of the week, some cooler days, some colder nights as well. We start the week with some wet weather, some warm weather. There'll be less rain and a lot less warmth by the end of the week. Rita.
Ben, thank you. Let's take a final look at the scene now at Buckingham Palace, where thousands of people have gathered during the course of the day to pay their respects to the Queen and to lay flowers. Well, that is all from us for now. But before we go, we'll leave you with some memorable images from today as the Queen's coffin made its journey from Balmoral to Edinburgh. Good night.